I'm trying some technological things tonight that I will be thinking about. All right, we're on.
We're on?
Yep.
Ready to go?
We're
Okay,
live.
people. It is 7:11. I'm gonna call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. If we could all please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address us other than the staff? Anybody that we see online?
Yeah.
Waiting to. Here's. Hey, Alan. Okay, reports from our students. Sam and.
Yes,
Mhm.
good evening, everyone. So tonight for academics, we have our Taj Theater and Jazz concert, which will be tomorrow night. We had band and chorus concerts May 7th for freshmen and sophomores, and the junior senior Rose concert was on May 15th. Student bands were performed in the Memorial Day Parade. Prom tickets were on sale from April 28th to May 12th. Tickets were $70 and financial aid options were available, and prom will be held on the 31st of May, the Saturday. Select Ensembles concert will be June 3rd, which features chamber choir, treble choir, basso choir, and jazz band. Old Saybrook, said that already. Finals are for the school year will be held from June 10th to June 13th, with makeup day on June 16th. OSH's graduation ceremony will be on June 16th at 4:45 p.m. The science department took a field trip to Lake Compounce on May 23rd. The select choirs are performing at Goodwin and the middle school on May 29th. Student representatives for the Board of Ed were elected on April 25th. The representatives will be Sylvie Weber and Nicholas Sokolowski. NHS is running a hygiene drive and a glasses drive, and they also elected their new executive board for next year. The underclassmen awards were May 22nd. The senior awards will be May 29th. AP exams were held May 5th to May 16th, and a new Rampage shop outside the cafeteria has been selling Rampage during lunch periods.
All right, moving on to sports. We're gonna start with tennis. They had a full sweep against HK on May 30th. Girls lacrosse, it's a lot of games tonight, so. Morgan, they beat Morgan on the 30th of April, and they had games, May 3rd against Waterford, May 8th against Cromwell, May 12th against Brantford, May 15th against Valley, May 20th against Morgan again, May 21st against Old Lyme, May 22nd against, or 27th, sorry, against HK. Moving on to crew, the girls, first varsity beat Old Lyme, and the boys, beat Avon, and they came in, second place. I'm pretty sure the girls actually got first for states at, they also had a regatta, against Coventry, and their states was, on May 15th, and our last regatta is this Sunday on June 1st. For track, they had meets on April 29th against East Hampton, May 3rd against Coggins, May 7th against North Brantford, May 20th against Cromwell, May 24th against Coggins again. For softball, they were mercied by 10 against Morgan on the 30th. For lacrosse on April 29th, they played against HK, May 3rd, St. Bernard's, May 7th, Old Lyme, May 8th, Cromwell, May 9th, Morgan, May 13th, North Brantford, May 15th, Valley, May 17th, Brantford, May 20th, Morgan, and May 27th, North Brantford again. And baseball, they had games against Valley on the 30th of April, 3rd of May, they had a game against St. Bernard. May 7th, they had a game against Hale Ray, May 8th against Old Lyme, May 10th against Portland, May 12th against Coggins, May 14th against Parish Hill, May 16th against Grasshoe Tech, May 19th against Norwich Tech, May 20th against Wyndham, and May 24th against Brentford. All right. All right, moving on to clubs. So the health club, they wore blue for the Mental Health Awareness Month. The drama club attended the Solheim Awards May 17th, and they held their annual banquet on May 21st, where they announced the next year's show. So will be Little Women and Chicago. Spanish Club, they're starting on volunteer opportunities. The Gray Matter Club, they had a Zoom meeting with Yale on May 9th, it was a while ago. Cancer Walk, they were selling tickets that were available on May 23rd. And they had a great spirit with all the different colors representing the different types of cancers. And they had their walk last Friday. Quiz Bowl, they had a meet on May 18th. Student government had elections on April 28th, and their executive board is set for next year. The Ecology Club had a camping trip on May 3rd, a recycling drive also on May 3rd, and they had a guest speaker from Yellow Farmhouse. Musing started accepting submissions for the 2025 magazine, and the Rambler has their May edition releasing on May 28th, and their June edition will be released online and printed on graduation, which is June 16th.
Then finally, for our student opinions, for AP exams, students felt the teachers were doing a great job of preparing students with giving them feedback in mock practice exams. And then students want to see change in the science scheduling. Currently, AP Biology and AP Chemistry rotate years that they run, meaning that every other year isn't able to follow the conventional science curriculum pathway with APs, leading to many people missing out on advanced classes they'd like to take. And that's all we have for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Someone, you tell me a little bit about the Spanish Club starting volunteering opportunities.
I'm pretty sure it has to do with towards the end of the year from the Spanish Club, they've wanted to have more volunteering opportunities with like the community and like the Spanish like learners of our school. One of them I'm pretty sure is I think it's called Exploramos, where they go to the it's like Goodwin School, and they meet with the little kids over there. So that's just one of the volunteering opportunities.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Excellent report, guys. Thank you very much. And then we're gonna move on to correspondence. There is no correspondence this evening. And then I would like a motion, please, to approve the special meeting minutes of May 20th. Have a motion on that, please, Eileen and Jane. Any discussion on that? Nothing, if we could just have a motion on those paper, signify by saying aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? Steve? Thank you. Moving on to educational issues. The first one is the student representative survey results. So, I mean, do you lead us off with that, please?
So you have the survey, and so we got the results, so if you'd like to share, this is an opportunity, for the student representatives that the Board of Education to speak about what they felt was valuable, areas that they felt maybe needed to be improved. And so it's an opportunity, if you had a chance to read it, was very comprehensive.
Some general feedback.
Yeah, being a student rep for the board, I think it was a very valuable experience personally, as I got to interact with not only like our school like system and how you guys do a lot of what students don't see and what goes on behind the school, but also being able to interact with a lot of students and also taking various points of various views from other people and really be a representative of a population that's always changing. So overall, a very valuable experience.
Yeah, really just the same thing. I was inspired to do it just because I happened to be friends with some of the people that I had seen do it. I had a study hall with one of them, seeing them like cram the reports, get as much information as they could preparing for meetings, and it just kind of piqued my interest. Great for the college resume. That was another thing. But then I was honestly surprised by how valuable the experience was, and just like how much, like I don't do any sports. I'm a theater person. That's like what I spend my time doing. So there's just so much that happens in the school that I just really didn't know about. So now I just feel like more of a member of my school community. I talk to so many more people now, and that was like what I told a lot of people, like being in Super, and I talked to a lot of people who were like, what's the deal? Is it a fun thing to do? And I was like, honestly, it's going to benefit you way more than you expect. Like I've loved it. It's been great.
Thank you, Stephen.
Question, I apologize, which of the reports, but one of the reports was, you had mentioned about maybe doing like a 2-year term or something along those lines. You know, would you feel like it could be valuable if there was like, say, two main and then maybe two alternates, so that you have that, you could possibly do 2 years, maybe the first year you're an alternate and are able to sit back and observe and help observe, you know, so then maybe the next year, they're the leads and new alternates and get that extra time period. You know, I don't know if that's an answer, it's just, you know, I saw that the
Yeah,
desire for 2 year terms or something.
No, I think that'd be a phenomenal idea, because I had discussed that in the like more like kind of the open-ended question where you could suggest other things. Just because from talking to a couple of other people from different districts, that I heard that some places that's something that they do where they have a 2-year term, and I started thinking about how beneficial that would be, but I know it would be difficult to get somebody to commit to doing something for 2 years, so I think that'd be a great way of like actually being able to implement it and make it possible. But I just think it would be a way to kind of expand the value of the position. Like JB and I, we had wanted to do more with our student opinion section this year. We had wanted to be able to send out surveys and kind of expand the amount of perspectives that we were able to get and share with you, so that we were really representing as many of our peers as possible. And then it was just one of those things that we just ran out of time and weren't able to really make possible. And just that, and there's so many other things that would then be possible if there was more time for us to like really establish ourselves in the school as like the representatives and talk to more people, establish like more methods of communication, basically, I think.
Karina. Thank you. 2 questions. One is, I think that you both said in different ways that it was a little bit different than what you expected. And it would be helpful to either have met with the offgoing representatives, for the oncoming individuals. Is there something in, and I don't know if I look to you or to Chris, you know, for superintendent, is there a plan already in place to help prepare those oncoming student reps so that they have a little bit more of what the expectation is, or is that something that we as a board should consider? And is there somebody who mentors you as far as, or are you left to your own devices as to what your student report should include?
Do you want to talk about it? Or I can talk. Ms. Baker and I, and JB and I, we were actually just talking about this. And I think a lot of the reason that it's not what, like more than you expect, just because I don't think that there is enough advertising done for it. I don't think, I had a pretty good idea, but that was purely, like I said, because I was friends with some of the people that I knew were doing it, but otherwise I probably would not have had a good idea, and honestly probably wouldn't have pursued it or even like known that it was something available to me. So I do think that there should be more done so that everyone in the school is aware of this opportunity, because it really is a phenomenal one. Yeah, I think maybe like posters or setting up something like we were saying, like past representatives talking to people. I don't know, but I do think that there needs to be a little bit more done there. I don't know if you have any other
Yeah.
ideas.
I mean, when I was wanting to take interest in being a student rep, I mean, other than Sam that was friends with one of the current reps, I had like no clue. I mean, I did seek like some like information with Miss Baker when we had the meeting, and that's when I really started to know. But before that, we have to do like a video for the election process, and I had no idea what I'd be even advocating for.
Right.
I was advocating for myself and not even know what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
So I think there should be a little bit more advertised, because I don't know how it was 2 years ago, but I know that this year and the year when we were having the elections, there were about like 5-6 people running, and that's a pretty small number.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna go to Jack next.
First of all, I want to thank you both, because I think you're trailblazers in a way, because you started the student opinion thing, and I know that I'm not gonna let it go away. I certainly, for the time that I'm here, I hope that you have a chance to talk to next year's incoming ones, so they start making progress like you two were talking about. I love the idea of the 2-year term, and I challenge and ask the board that we put this on an agenda for a discussion. The possibility of discussing it as a board. Maybe it's something where you're both gonna be seniors next year. There are 2 incoming juniors that are going to be on the board. Maybe you act as mentors to the two juniors, you know, and between the four of you, you coordinate so the two show up for the meetings. Kind of like what you're talking about in a way, where you have a group of four, and two out of the four show up every time. I don't know if we could put it in place for next year or anything like that, but I think it's a wonderful idea, because you're right. You know, I was new to the board last year, and if I had 1 year in and out, you know, I was just learning how things actually functioned, how the gears turned, how questions and answers worked, how these words and these, you know, documents, what they meant. So I love the idea, and I think it's something that we should consider. And I like the idea that you both have different opinions, like you were so well informed because you knew somebody and you were kind of in the dark. That's part of being a student, and that's a perfect representation of the school, because, you know, people come from different perspectives, you know, different experiences. And so I like the makeup, so I would ask that you do what you can to try and get together with whoever's next. Which I know who the individuals are, and, you know, maybe there's a way you could, like I said, be mentors for next year.
I was gonna say that, last year, we actually met, Mr. Anastasio, myself, with the students that were interested in becoming student reps. And so we gave that opportunity, because what you're saying is really, there's no question, they kind of have to know what they're getting into. And so that's just, I think it's something that you have a regulation, so we need to review that and see if that's being actually, addressed. Because for instance, I think Samantha, we have some guidelines, if you want to be a student rep, you have to come to board meeting. You know, there are some very specifics in there, and so, and we always announce them when we have a meeting that they're here. I think also just the fact of being able to get a sense of mentoring. And maybe that's something we are, if this May, so now that we know who the new reps are, we can probably maybe, I can talk to Chris and maybe put that place.
Steve, would you follow?
Yeah, I'm just brainstorming, and I know we have a ton of stuff to do tonight, so we don't want to spend I would love the idea of coming back to this and having some time to actually mull this through, but, you know, increasing the size so that they can get in touch with more people, so it's not just two people trying to talk to however many kids are in the school. And maybe, I don't know, did you guys there's a student government over there, correct? You know, are you involved in that, like, almost like a I don't know, dignitary of the student government, so that they're attending those meetings, or those people know that they can come to you to get stuff to hear. I just think there's probably some more that we could do to really involve the school as a whole and have a really good setup. So I think it's great. I think we can develop it.
And I think you guys would be the ones that could probably tell us how we can do that best.
I agree that this should probably be brought as a agenda item for a future meeting. I do think we need to understand what is the student's role as a board participant. And I do think that you guys have done a wonderful job. And I think it's important for us to set them up for success. So it feels like what I would like to see in advance as part of that agenda item is the trend analysis, the summary of the last 4 or 5 years from the students, because some of what they've stated we've heard before. And so I don't know what our communication path is. It sounds like you meet with Joe Anastasio
And the students.
and the students, but like, let's talk about it as a board so that we understand their role, and we're looking at, you know, that they take the time to fill out these surveys. I don't want their feedback to die. And I don't know that we necessarily look back at previous surveys and say, you know what, we've heard this 4 times. Let's do something about it. So I'd like to see a summary of the previous
I think that's great.
surveys at that agenda item.
Yeah, so excellent feedback. Thank you. So I think, you know, clearly this points to, we need to look at our process. We need better outreach to reach students before, so we can advertise what this is all about. So you know, have more students potentially interested in running.
I was gonna just say that something we really believe in, you know, when we put this policy right together, is we wanted a cross section of students, not just students that are involved in student government. So that really represents the student body.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful ambassadors.
Yeah, that's been awesome. We are now going to move on to the Spanish French resources presentation. Dr. Fletcher is here with us and our superintendent, and take it away, guys.
Dr. Fletcher is here with us.
Yes, he is.
Good evening. Turn the mic over.
Person.
And the most beautiful part about that is that Manone is here with us.
Yes.
So now you have the
Turn it
very
over.
most informed presentation, Spanish book presentation. Please, Manone.
Thank you.
That's
I
very smooth.
I wasn't sure that I will be here tonight, so Dr. Fletcher proposed that he can present, but I'm here. So, good evening. I would like to talk to you about a new resource for the French and Spanish program at the school and at the high school. And it's called Reporteros and Reporter, and it's by the company Clet that we have already started to use for the German program and for the French program at the high school. So the goals, the purpose of this resource is to serve as a research-based learning tool. Believe it or not, children are actually very happy these days to work with paper and pencil. I assume I'm talking in your opinion as well. I know with personally my French and German students, they very much like to have that tactile on the paper, writing out paragraphs, line exercises. But there's still the technology portion to it as well. So we always have the possibility to put up the book on the screen. And we also usually have a class set of books for students who like to see right in front of them, which is always nice. This new resource will also help to shape and support our curriculum. We're doing a lot of curriculum work through ILT and through our departments, vertical alignment and scope and sequences. And this new resource is really up to date with what school systems and districts do across the state and the country in regard to curriculum writing. And then also the 21st century skills. Our first standard in world language is communication. We have 5 standards. The first most important one is communication, because that's what we like for our students to be able to do, that they speak and understand. And so with this new resource, there are a lot of up-to-date activities. So as a little example, we have older resources where students are still listening to a Walkman, which I think is great because that's how I used to do it. But there's a lot of vocabulary, a lot of pictures that the students are like, do we really need to learn this word? And they're right. I mean, do they really need to know a word, baladeur, French for Walkman, for example? No, because no one uses it anymore. So it's updated in regard to culture and what young people of our students' age really are into and what they like about. So
They go too far.
I think if you go to that.
Rationale right there.
So the adoption will benefit students and teachers to align with our current practices. And I mean, you have probably noticed that over years, we're not just teaching and learning vocabulary conjugation by itself, but we like to teach grammar through text and through audio. So these books are very much aligned with that practice to expose children to the culture and to the language. And within that, we highlight, we show, we model the grammar explanations and grammar applications, and same with vocabulary. So that's what's called the applied learning to speaking, writing, listening, and reading. And all 4 skills we practice pretty much in every class with the most important goal of communication. And then what really is important to us, again, especially, I think everyone can agree with that, the engagement of students. And students are not starting to get tired or unattentive because of more dry and really, exercises that don't let students actually reach a level of communication that's practical. So this resource will help support practical application, and that will keep students more engaged. The building and department goals, so high quality instruction, the making of thinking visible is very important. So what do we teach? Can we really see students also apply it and be successful in it? student goal setting, these resources, are all connecting to our proficiency guidelines and levels. So when we talk about novice high, intermediate mid, there are examples of what that would look like. So students are able to say, this is, or to see with us as teachers, this is the level I'm at, and this is what I need to do in order to get to the next level. And then professional, learning, that's for us, for the teachers, that we're going to calibrate and define achievement of assessed standards. So we all need to be on the same page as teachers of, what are we teaching? And then also that has to be the mirror of what we are assessing, otherwise there's a, mislink, link missing. And, yeah, and then professional learning is happening through our department meetings and, other curriculum work. Statistics and data. Students at public schools are interested in Spanish, French, and German language and culture, and have shown interest in the diverse applications of that program. I say that because I have taught this year for the first time through CLET, French and German, which we got, you were kind enough to approve last year. And so this is for the middle school and high school French and Spanish teachers, that also were asking for the resource. Challenges. We have been in need of a text and activities that spark interest and imagination. So the student input is what they receive, the listening and the reading. And then what can they do with that in order to give student output, the speaking and the writing. And then students need activities, text and support speaking, communication, with language standard 1, with 21st century vocabulary and phrases. I have talked about that a couple minutes ago. Successive. So we do have a long-standing world language program, as you know, K through 12. The state of literacy is attainable in Spanish, French, Portuguese, example, Italian, and other languages. I'm actually also happy to say that we have a student who just passed also the state of literacy in Montenegrin and Serbian, I believe. Right?
Yeah, one to two for us.
Yeah, I think she did. Yeah, I think she did actually both. Which is really, I love seeing that, how students more and more realize, hey, I speak this language at home. Can I somehow get recognition for that in America and work or colleges that I want to go to? And this is what we like to have them be able to show. And then school with students is aligned across French, Spanish, and German, which is also nice because when we talk, the teachers talk with each other. If we use similar resources, we can actually compare and contrast on help each other and build it up. Next steps, with your approval, we plan to purchase books and workbooks for levels 1 and 2, Spanish and French, in high school, continue with world language curriculum work and vertical alignment, and then us teachers need to familiarize ourselves with students' interests and abilities. And CLET actually has a lot of online workshops that we can take part in as well, in order how to differentiate, how to adjust our teaching and our assessments. Okay, this is it, right? Yes.
This is a process that the World Language Department have been going through, trying to really improve all aspects of their instructional delivery. And they've taken a lot of time and thought and energy to put into finding the resource that they knew would be great for the kids, and also continue to push our World Language Department forward.
Any other questions? Eileen?
So is this a new type of program? How do you say it? CLET?
CLET, yeah, so the publisher is CLET, the company. Yes, so, I don't know if program is really the right word, because it's really just a support for us to have ideas on how to present certain grammar structures and vocabulary themes. So for example, if the imperfect comes into play, 2 past tenses, every book, and I think since humans have been learning languages, a way to teach past tense is to talk about childhood memories, which makes sense, right? Because it's past tense, and we use 2 different types of tenses in the past. And so technically the themes are the same, but so in this new resource, the vocabulary is going to be adjusted to more modern language or up to date, this is going to interest students actually. in regard to childhood memories, you know?
It makes it more relevant for them.
Yeah, so for example, in the old book that we used to use, only the boys played with the trains and the girls played with the dolls. But nowadays.
While they were listening to their Walkmans.
Yes. So, so it's kind of interesting to see that it's a little bit more, you know, open and more accepting, you know, for today's world. So, that's important. Yeah, that's just one example. It was just necessary to bring some fresh air into our resources.
Any other schools use it on the shoreline?
When I talked to Colette, actually to the company at one of our world language conferences, and I couldn't tell you which school exactly. There are not many companies anymore that make actually good resources like the ones that we used to use in French, which is called still BND. They're stopping altogether with language resource books and workbooks. So I think unfortunately a lot of companies are pulling back on world language because I think teachers are just using maybe online resources and websites and other ways. But to me, that's not always the best choice if it's not research based, if there's not a real author behind it, and it's not guaranteed that who writes the material is part of, you know, a job, so to say, right? You work to be a good writer and you put that out on the market and, you know, you work and someone pays you for the resource. So I couldn't tell you what school exactly, but I could get back to you.
Steve.
And the idea of this, that these books and workbooks will also be used down in the middle school, so we have a continuity of flow from middle school up, and I'm a huge fan of actually having something to hold this book at and reference. You know, when you're stuck, and if you don't have a book, it's hard to reference things, so.
We're looking for a motion.
Yeah. We will be. Do we have, so the funds for this is in this year's budget? We're all set with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any further, Jane?
No.
Oh,
You're ready to move ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Go for
Excellent.
it.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion and we approve.
Okay. Stephen or Lee made the motion. Got it? Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye, and we've got Alan here somewhere. Alan, we need you.
There we go.
Thank you, Alan. Anybody opposed and abstentions? Nothing, because we're all in agreement. Thank you so much. What a good program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work. I've seen you quite a few years now in a row. Just to throw that out there. You've definitely been here a lot, so I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Moving on to AP US Government, main course presentation. Hi, ladies. Thank you.
So Sam is gonna join us, and that is because Sam actually is a huge part of this whole process. She did lead, this as her capstone project. So, I was able to kind of guide her along that way as well. So she is a pivotal part of our presentation today. So we are presenting to you, AP, Government and Politics. This would be an additional AP course offered at the high school. You can go into this. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So the goals of this course would be very similar to what we offer currently at our half-year civics course, except it would be an even broader, more in-depth look at government and the principles of it. So we have exploring some foundational democratic principles, which they do a lot in other courses as well. That would probably be the easiest part. Foundations of government, where we would also get into analyzing political institutions throughout America. Understand political behavior and civic engagement, which is huge. For these kids that do want to perhaps pursue some sort of career for one, a pathway that may include government or civics in any way. Evaluate public policy in a way. We will be bringing more current events into this course as we also examine past court cases. There's a lot of focus on Supreme Court in this class. And then interpreting data and applying evidence, as well as developing some sort of civic competence, which is, I think, a huge goal in particularly our social studies department, especially with some of the new clubs that we've been offering, including Model UN, Youth in Government, and even broadening, as you guys were talking about before, our student government.
The purposes, of course, and our rationale. So yes, while we offer a civics course, that is a half-year course at the high school, this would be providing them, students, an opportunity to engage in a full year course, especially for those that are very passionate about, this field. So it would provide a college level course opportunity for students. Currently, our civics course is an unleveled course within the high school. It would also create a pathway for students who are interested in careers of politics, law, government, history, as Brenda just mentioned, and public speaking as well. This is a very active classroom. This is one where students engage in debate and engage in a lot of discourse. So it feeds right into all the communication skills that we work on in social studies department.
So building goals are about implementing instructional strategies that will increase further opportunities for our students, and this does just that. This will give a different type of more of like a seminar type of feel in the classroom for these students that you may see at the college level. It'll also allow them to have further opportunities in this field. Our social studies department has actually, I think personally, over the past few years, has become a huge interest of students. So to be able to offer them more and something different and something more challenging will feed right into this goal. It's also increasing the idea of student voice, being able to have those important discussions around civics and empowering them in a meaningful and polite manner. The art of debate. Yeah. All right.
So as a student working on this with Mrs. Torrey and Mrs. Nasser, kind of the largest part of my role was really talking to my peers, sending out several surveys to people, getting interest, just having conversations with people, really just finding out if there was a genuine interest in taking this class in students that aren't me. So I was surprised to find how many different students were like quick to like, yes, like I would love to learn more about government, people who want to pursue government, law, journalism, policy, all these different things that these courses aren't addressed, that these people who want to pursue that in college, in life, and their needs just aren't necessarily met at the high school level right now. And even beyond that, just students who truly don't know very much about their government, and just as people living in a democracy, living in America, want to be educated when they leave Old Saybrook. And so this is just some of the most relevant data that I found. This shows you the interest levels of survey answers in taking AP Government, and this is the results from a survey that I sent to freshmen, sophomore, and juniors, people who could potentially take in the future. I did also survey seniors, people who, if they could have taken the course, would they? And I did find a lot of students respond that they would have loved to, and I have a lot more data that I'd be happy to share with you. But this just shows you that trend, and then I don't know if the other
There is one.
graph is featured in here. Okay, perfect. And then beyond that, this is a little bit more of like an astounding piece of data to look at to see how many students just want more AP courses in general. We really do have a significant population of students at the school who want to be challenged, who want more from their education, and I think that that's a wonderful trend, and I think it's something that we need to address, and this is definitely a step in the right direction for that.
Can I ask a question about this, the Likert scale? What do the numbers represent? Do they represent level of interest, or does it represent strongly agree and strongly disagree? What's the 1 through 5 range represent?
So it was a lot of questions. You can see the question at the top right, how interested you would have been in OSH's offering more. This was actually one that was asked to seniors, because I think that they had a better perspective having graduated and looking at colleges for if they wanted more when it came to that opportunity. And then rate the interest, like one would have been like no interest at all, and 5 would have been like, yes, absolutely, I would have loved that, so that kind of shows you that scale there.
And I do, and just going off of the seniors, just them knowing that we're here presenting tonight. A lot of them are actually disappointed they did not get that opportunity. So, this has been a conversation that has been going on. Sam knew I was having these conversations for the past couple of years, so that's why she asked me to help her out, so.
So with every AP course that you start up, some of the challenges include a need to understand the complex concepts and ability to analyze and apply knowledge. So, while students could have potentially taken a civics course before taking this class, because maybe this now is an offering that is available to them, they would be looking at a lot of the topics and content in a very deep level, and some of it is really complex texts. Some of the foundational documents within one of the units, you're looking at Federalist Papers, you're looking at very rich texts. So they can be complex, court cases and the summaries of them. Students managing their time effectively, as with all APs, advanced writing skills, there's argumentation, there's comparative analysis that they have to conduct as part of the writing tasks on the assessment. And also just familiarizing with the actual format of the exam itself and with all test taking strategies, right? Staff challenges, yep, we would need to send someone for training for the course, and also make sure that the students have access to the necessary texts for the course. It is a very primary source dependent course. So primary source is something of that time, which we actually have a lot of access to online. So that's helpful. Okay, sure. So just looking at the 2024 data for this course, some schools have offered this as a half-year course. I think majority of them offer it as the full year because it would be very intensive if you did it as a half year. But students predominantly do really well on this assessment. 73% of them in 2024 of all test takers of this course scored a 3 or higher last year. So that's very good numbers. In looking at the course design, it is very aligned with our definition of high quality instruction. It does offer an inquiry-based approach. It has a developed approach of questions and supporting questions within the actual written curriculum. It's meaningful, it has meaningful and engaging experiences. There are a lot of potential for simulations and debates within the classroom, mock Congress. And also importantly, it emphasizes civic responsibility and awareness as it relies on use of current data and current research and conversations in government and politics.
Next steps for us and you would be, we would offer this course next year, 25-26 school year, to students that are interested. We would use the recommendations from College Board to determine those primary and secondary sources that Diana had already mentioned. That would be included, all which are quite accessible to us. We actually use them for the course as well. And then we have to collect survey data from students about how we can further improve the instructional delivery of the course after the first year of teaching it.
All we have on this is all we want.
Any questions?
Yeah, how many students would you consider to be a good target for the number of people that would take this class?
In the classroom itself, that can vary. Like I said, it does set itself up to be more of like a seminar course in a sense. So anywhere from 10 to 15 students would probably be a nice number to, sit and discuss and everybody have the opportunity to be heard. So I would say that would be probably the ideal.
And is that about what we get for most AP courses or
No,
like A push?
my A push course, can run anywhere, I've gotten into like the 23s, which that course is it's different in the instructional methods, right, than this course would be. That's more direct instruction, that's more historical based, this is going to be tying history into present day.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And so this would replace, for those students who haven't yet taken civics, this would give them credit for that.
100%.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. However, my only concern is that, how do I tactfully put this? That all sides of politics are discussed equally without reservation, without bias. Is that something that would occur?
That is something that as a social studies teacher, we deal with on a daily basis. So absolutely. I think that that's something that we struggle with. We have to obviously approach, daily in any class, whether it's global citizenship as a ninth grader and we're talking about, Israel and the conflicts happening there. Or it's, AP US history, and we're talking about, the Civil War. So, yes.
Right, and I understand all that and I hear it. That is specifically in the title, government and politics. And I mean, we could sit here and we could have some very dynamic and animated conversations about politics. It's just the nature of politics itself. And, my concern is in the past I've heard, and I don't have a pipeline anymore, stories of things only being allowed to be one-sided in the school. And I just want to really reiterate that, everybody has an opinion and everyone's entitled to be able to have their opinion or their basis of things. It's great to teach how to be open-minded and listen to both sides. I would really, I'll leave it at, I really encourage that.
I think that is the intention and the goal. Like I said, as social studies teachers, we do hit that head on a daily basis. And so I think in the political climate we live in now, this would be a good thing for kids, right? This is a good place for them to learn how to have conversations that are important.
I think the story said earlier was teaching our kids the way to debate responsibly and I guess kindly, I guess. I don't want to paraphrase what you said, but
Yeah.
this is a controlled environment where we should teach them civic discourse. So.
Yeah, thank you. I think that this is an opportunity to help students learn how to discover and collect information to help themselves formulate open, opinions rather than coming in there with an opinion, right? Because they're young, so I think that it's great, and I think it's an opportunity to bring an AP course in for someone who's not a math and science. This just offers another avenue for them. But I hear exactly what you're saying, that this should be the opportunity to learn how to communicate with one another and research and figure out why do you have the opinion that you do and defend it.
Yeah.
Or maybe determine that, some of this information might help you formulate a different opinion. So.
And those are clearly stated goals of the course. And this is a very clear curriculum by College Board of here are the objectives of the course, and we want students to be able to engage in all approaches to these questions.
And not feel intimidated.
Good. All right, so a few questions for your presentation. So it says staff training for teaching the course. So you're proposing that this course would be offered next year. And so how does the training take place between now and next year?
An online offered by College Board course. So I would get to sit, and do that for a week this summer. Yes.
And then is this course offered at a certain grade level at the high school?
I think right now we've talked about probably the same as we do for A-Push, AP United States History, 10th through 12, with recommendation, yeah. Ninth grade, it might be, going with the debate and the discussion and, yeah.
And with the fact that all students have to graduate with a civics class, do you find that doing this research, I don't know what happens in your civics class, but because it's mandated, for graduation, are there things that you feel that would be incorporated in this AP? Because obviously it's geared toward a certain type of student that you would look at in terms of civics to strengthen that, because all students need to learn how to debate, not just the ones in AP. So I was just curious because I don't know the curriculum, but to know if this has helped to refine a little bit more of the civics course that's being
Yeah.
offered.
Absolutely, and Dr. Fletcher could speak to this more. But as we're embarking in a curriculum revision cycle, that is something that we would absolutely consider.
One thing, since, and I agree that sounds like a good plan for 10th and up. But having a good communication, for our 8th graders that are moving into 9th grade, making sure that they realize when they sign them, I'm not sure how many 9th graders take civics.
We just started this year, enrolling some in civics, so, that would have to be communicated so that students know, I foresee that we have kids taking it if it's offered next year that have already taken civics, because they have that foundation and they want more. But that would be a communication of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, just to make sure, because, a semester is critical for some of these
Sure.
kids, and if they can eliminate that, and do something different in 9th grade, and then be able to have this, and, be able to plan ahead for that.
And I know that we are in discussion about, different pathways, so that would be a part of, as we build the curriculum and revise that, that would be a part of our.
Excellent, excellent.
Just one quick thing, I just want to say thank you, because if I'm correct, thank you for bringing student opinions to reality, because if I'm correct, I believe it was Talia, with the Model UN, and now we have Sam with this AP Gov.
Yeah.
And you're advising, facilitating this process of really making things happen for students, so thank you.
No, I was just gonna say it's a great addition to our AP course selection and certainly supports Sam's research that she just presented. So I'd like to make a motion to approve this AP US government course as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Steve. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unopposed, the motion carries. Thank you so much. This is a great opportunity.
Thank you.
Well done.
Well, actually,
Sam, does that mean you passed your capstone now?
Wait, you are? Everything that we did.
I guess you could tell the board now, if you think she nailed that, she nailed her capstone, I said it. But those of you who may know that our 2 student reps had a very busy night the other night, remember which night it was, that underclassmen awards, if you weren't able, so I think the polite thing would be to let them go
Yes,
home now and get some rest.
absolutely.
See,
Cause they were wearing out the carpet in the auditorium getting awards, so Sam and JB,
Rest this weekend.
I'd say, you guys, I don't know how many steps you had the other night at award ceremony, but your name could get consistently called, so if it's okay with the board, I
Of
think
course.
it's time to let you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Have a very nice evening.
and I. Prepare one for next meeting.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so then we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the donation for East Lyme.
So apparently this is an annual thing, but the East Line Board of Education, makes a $550 donation annually to our girls lacrosse team.
Because
Because
Our coaches provide a training seminars for their students. So our coaches go to East Lyme and provide like a workshop for their lacrosse players. And it's actually more of an honorarium, but they write on the check, it's a donation, and therefore by policy, it has to go before technicalities.
I had it. Now, I could have got it, but that's what it is.
So we need a motion to accept.
don't.
We don't, we're good.
Just notifying.
Okay,
Yes.
great,
Next.
even better. Okay, FY 26 budget.
Moving on, as you're aware that the Board of Finance had reduced the board's budget request by $293,000. The Board of Education budget was approved by referendum on May 13th. But to keep the board's initiatives moving forward, capital maintenance items scheduled for fiscal year 26 are planned to be completed with fiscal year 25 unexpended funds, which we just talked about in our facilities committee. Additionally, there's an additional health insurance adjustment we're able to make, about $44,000. So therefore, there will only be about $70,000 remaining in the capital maintenance budget for fiscal year 26. And then the remainder of the board's requested budget can remain intact. You just need to approve your actual budget.
So moved. Moved by Jane, seconded by Karen. Any further discussion?
Just one question. Last year, about this time, we had a group of parents come to speak about the playground equipment. Has there been any investigation into, by investigation is the wrong word, looking into the cost and the process yet for a new playground equipment?
We are actually in the process of looking at the existing playgrounds and making potential modifications. I won't speak out of turn. We just talked about that in the last meeting. With the understanding that shoring up what we currently have and making any required adjustments to that, and then we would engage in those conversations after that. We're waiting for some bids to come in.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions or discussions? Okay, if not, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries, including Ellen to change. Okay, perfect. All right, and then now we have our first reading of some policies.
Alrighty, Chris, so the first one is actually, we had a policy committee meeting and it was very engaging. And first one is Series 2000 Administration, Retention of Electronic Records and Information.
My turn? Yeah. All right, I'll try to go through this appropriately. All these, again, this is the fourth phase of policy updates that we needed to make. Again, all still with the exception of one, it's not even a policy thing, which I'll get to as we get down the list. But these are all legislative changes that we have to make policy adjustments to. This particular Series 2000 Administration, Retention of Electronic Records and Information. Long story short, there is an office called the Connecticut State Library Office of Public Records Administrator, otherwise known as OPRA. And OPRA would dictate to us as a Board of Education when we could digitize records, that we have to keep certain records for a certain period of time. Those are all done by state statute. Traditionally, if we wanted to digitize some of those records, we would notify OPRA. The law has now rescinded that, where now we have to ask OPRA for permission, not to get rid of the records, those are done by statute. We have to ask OPRA if it's okay if we digitize certain records. That's the Reader's Digest version of the policy that you don't have a choice but to implement.
These were in your, in your folder.
They're all
So
in your
if you have
folder.
questions, this is the time to ask.
Not seeing any questions, I will move on to Series 4000 Personnel. This is sex discrimination and sexual harassment. This is for personnel. In your first policy phase, back in October, you had approved a bunch of policy changes, same series. Because there were changes in Title IX definitions that were made from the federal government. Those Title IX policy changes have now been rescinded, which means that there is no red line policy in your policy folders now, because what we essentially have to do is cancel the current policy and readopt your old policy that you just updated last November, because the references to Title IX have now been changed. And the Title IX, and they're earmarked in your policy and you can see where they are, but some definitions under Title IX have been changed through executive order to affect Title IX, which then by default affects some of your policy. So you basically have to cancel your current one and revert back to your old one, which was your old one that you just changed in November. And you'll see that again as we go down the list a bit, but that's the only change that's required in this particular policy.
Does that have an effect on some of the issues we had been dealing with respect to access to locker rooms.
Not this one. This is Title IX.
Okay.
There are no changes for them.
They changed terminology, if I'm correct.
There are some terminology changes, yes.
Identification within it.
Good, moving on to 5,000, policy and improvement completion of the FAFSA rate, that's essentially just changing the date. The existing policy, it references, the legislation was passed in 2023, it referenced the class of 2025. Just like in your graduation requirement policy, we had to change the FAFSA component to 2027, that would be the change in this particular policy.
So I read through it. I mean, well, I don't like the fact that that is a graduation requirement, just because I don't think the government needs to have that. What I feel we're lacking in this is the Connecticut statute 10-221Z. Has language in there where your parents can sign a waiver, and that is acceptable. But while we reference in our policy, Connecticut General Statute 10-221Z, we don't actually put in there any language that says a parent can sign a waiver. So I would like that actual language to be added in there so parents know, if they're going to work at EB, in our program that we were so excited about learning about, they don't need a FAFSA. And they can sign a waiver and you still graduate. So I think we need to be specific on that, because not everybody needs to fill out a FAFSA. I understand the government's desire to have all that information, but they don't need it. That's my only, that's my opinion on it. And, I don't know if we need to have further discussion, have that language added into it, or what. If I need to make a motion to have that added.
It raises an interesting question because your graduation requirement is now tied to the completion of FAFSA.
Alternatively, you can sign the waiver. That's what the language says.
You could sign the waiver. The policy that's in front of you now has been vetted, obviously, through Shipman, so that's why it made it to you. If you wanted to hold that back for further clarification, I could get that. Obviously, they wrote it, they're aware of the statutory references. If it's embedded in the law, it's covered anyway. It might just be a matter of how we advertise it.
That's my issue.
That might be, so it may not be a policy. I don't think there's any wiggle room in the policy. How we get that out to the public
But
could
if
be.
the policy quotes the law, there should be no issues with quoting the actual law for people.
It all depends on, do you want to quote the law that in the actual policy or in the advertisement of that?
Where else would we add in that parents have the option of signing a waiver?
Well, so it would be incumbent upon the parents to know what the law is. What it is.
Well,
I'm not taking a side, I'm just saying that's.
That's where I have an issue with Shipman in the way the language is. So
I'm not.
So I think it needs to be pulled back, and that we need to have that further discussion, because that's not fair to the parents to take the time and know, because it just references Connecticut General Statutes, and I don't know how many of you read this policy and reviewed the Connecticut General Statutes. So now we're gonna expect the parents to do it when the majority of the board didn't even do it. I don't think that's fair. So Shipman's is great, but they're not the end all be all. And I think we need to do our due diligence for the families and parents of Old Saybrook. So do I need to make a motion to pull that policy from the first reading or?
First reading right now anyways, there's still time
Yeah.
until the second reading, so we can have further discussion on how we wanna.
You have to go through a second reading and you can do it as amended in second reading.
Talk to the attorney.
And I can run back and make sure we're just not getting our
Yeah.
various positions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Okay, are we good with that one? All right, moving on, 5,000 for students. This is carbon copy of the sex discrimination, other than 4,000 was personnel. This was the same change for Title IX, but it's under your student policy. The next issue on student attendance is actually not a policy change. Okay, so I know that Mr. Plotkin could make that a family issue, but within your student attendance and truancy and tardiness policy, your policy is pretty generic, that what accompanies a policy is our administrative regulation. Within the administrative regulation, it doesn't dictate if there are any consequences for for students, and I apologize, we were so late, I left it on my desk, I will go run and get my medal. There is no consequences for students who exceed absences and or parties within the district. We are the only district on the shoreline that does not have any sort of potential loss of credit for attendance. And this has been researched throughout the high school. I think Dave got interviewed for the student newspaper already, or it's coming, or we're just letting the cat out of the bag now. But Dave did some extensive research throughout the shoreline, throughout the state of Connecticut. And essentially what the median is for a half a year course, 8, full year course, 16. That means any student who has 16 absences in a full year course risks the loss of credit. Now, there is an appeal process. So you would have, and we would do the appeal in real time. I'll use my own child as an example. I get a monthly attendance letter per class, per grade for my high school senior that says, this is what the policy is. This is what the procedure is. It's actually an administrative reg, so it's not a board policy. And you don't need to take action on this one. We just thought this was such a sort of seismic shift. We wanted to at least bring it to you, and we have to communicate this out to the public. So this is the first phase of that. With doing that and putting some consequences with the loss of credit, one of our major goals is chronic absenteeism, and your kids can't learn if they're not here. And this is really more of an knowledge for parents to say, help us get your students to school. And I have some high school teachers in the room where they can actually attest to this. How's period 1 attendance?
Really?
Low.
Office is busy.
Okay. There is more of a concern with tardiness necessarily. Now, there's always going to be attendance issues, and there's process to go for that. If you have doctors and you have a policy on unexcused absences. What we don't have is what happens if you exceed that threshold. So what we are going to implement is for a half-year course, 8 absences. For a full year course, 16 absences. Once you hit that threshold, and that's kind of on the low end of the shoreline, but we wanted to make sure we eased it in. As we get to that, you have the potential for loss of credit through that process. Some districts, they wait for the appeal process to the end of the course. We're not going to do that, because if your kid is potentially losing credit, we want to let them know as soon as possible so we can remedy. We don't want kids to lose credit, we just want them to be there. There's also a tardiness component to that. So 5 tardies to 1 class will count as an absence. So you'll see in period 1, when kids are rolling in with Starbucks in their hands, they're late for period 1. I'm not picking on, that's why I let the student reps go. As the kids are coming into class, if you're not in class, you're not learning. You're not there. We're trying to put so much emphasis on FaceTime with kids and getting back that learning loss in those 21st century skills we're trying to teach kids. We can't do that if they're not there. These folks can't do that if they're not there. So every 5th tardy would be 1 absence in that class. So if you get to 8 for a half-year course and then you're tardy on the 6th day, you're at 9, you potentially lose some credit. That would start the appeal process. We don't want kids to lose credit, but we want them there. We are one of the only districts in the shoreline. We are the only district in the shoreline that does not have an attendance policy that has some teeth to it. So we worked on this for the year. I know the folks at the high school have been talking with students about it. There's gonna be some griping on some kids at some point, but the vast majority, the same kids who asked for AP Gov and said, you know, maybe we should have some sort of requirements for making sure that we're here, because sometimes it's not fair to our teachers where half the class isn't there, you know, for the first 15 minutes of class, we gotta start over. So it is gonna be a shift. We are gonna communicate this out. We had talked about doing this throughout the year. Did not want to do it in the middle of the school year until we made sure everybody knew what the heck was going on. You don't have to take any action on it. We just thought it was important that when I appreciate Ms. Baker, that Dave came in and sort of did his presentation. He has all the data. I will send you that information on the side. It was not, if it's not included in your packet, I apologize, because Dave was going to try to be here tonight, but he couldn't. We will get that information to you so you have it. We will start that process of communicating that on the families.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry.
Jen,
Yeah, so I understand that what you're talking about applies to high school students.
Yes.
Do we have anything that was gonna help with, issues at Goodwin in the middle school?
At the moment, the way that our administrative regulation is laid out, it is separated between 9, 12 and then below. So the change that we're making now, we're adding a letter I to the administrative regulation that says this is for 9 to 12. We have nothing district-wide, other than our regular truancy policy and chronic absenteeism and those things, those are all universal. We don't have anything for potential loss of credit. We're starting at the high school. This is something that we could possibly unify across the district as we get into it, but the place to really start this is at the high school level.
No, I understand that. But if a child has been absent for a certain amount of time in Goodwin or middle school,
Yeah.
is there a letter sent?
Yes, that falls under your attendance policy and truancy policy, so it's 10. 10 unexcused absences, we have to notify families if you're beyond 10. This is specific to the high, but even when we notify, so if you're your child that got that nasty letter. And we send it to you. That's it.
There's no.
There's nothing. Now, if it continues, then we may have to make referrals to state agencies, because there might be some educational neglect types things. I'm not saying that's the case. But as far as at the high school, if you get that letter and it says that your child's been absent, 11 times this year, you're technically chronically absent. But there's no consequence within their coursework for those particular acts. And again, there's always circumstances. That's why we try to make it as flexible as possible. We're not trying to hurt anyone. We're trying to make sure that we get kids we want kids to be in school. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, so.
I was just gonna mention that, what Chris referenced is that the procedures and impact on potential loss of credit will be dictated by the protocols listed in the program of studies.
Yes, so right now, the policy references the reg references the program of study. So the actual systemic change will be, the document will be the program of studies, because that's where it outlines the credit process. So really, the administrative reg is just changing to reference into the program of studies.
Parents will have to sign off.
And parents, everyone gets the program of studies, signs off on the program. It's not a surprise, but we are going to over communicate this on the front end. So people are still gonna be surprised. I'm just gonna warn you, you're gonna get calls. You'll be copied on the communication that goes out though, because this is something that everybody in the community needs to know.
So there's forms to fill out. If you want, especially educational experience that you don't want your student to be penalized for.
Yes.
Alan has his hand up.
Oh.
Go ahead, Alan.
Oh, so Chris, you mentioned that David had collected information around, this. What's the data telling us? You say, for example, first period, there's a higher propensity of kids to be late. So there is data that there should be baseline data when we institute this new attendance policy. We should have good data that we should share with parents, right? And it's a baseline going forward that we show success in instituting this policy, over year 1, 2, and so on. Do you understand what I'm saying and what I'm asking?
Yes, you're 100% right. And where I failed is I left it physically on my desk, or else I could have it. I can read you the numbers here. We're gonna email that out to you after the meeting, but they did a tremendous job gathering not just geographical data, as far as who has policies like this and what the trends tend to be, but also internal data about what period are we seeing our highest tardiness? Where are we seeing our most? So that is the baseline to say, let's see if we put this change in our procedure forward. So when we look at that data for next year, we can see if that had a positive impact ultimately on getting kids to school and getting kids in class on time.
Yes, thank you. So in addition to that, I think it should be shared with parents in some way, shape, or form, the extent of what the issue is and why we're doing this, so there should be some kind of communication from you. I would assume that you would do that, and inform parents, right? To start the process. So it is a problem and we're correcting it, or we're working towards remediating it going forward. Okay, thank you.
Got it. Okay. You need to do nothing on that one. Moving on. Still under the student 5,000 series for student use of district computer systems. These are some statutory changes that I made as far as changing certain words. They're in your packet. I don't know what I'm saying, but I will. Substituting the words child pornography with the word child sexual abuse material. So those are essentially the major changes that were statutorily changed, that you have to change in effect of your policies.
And removing those technology that are sort of out.
Yes, there's also some outdated technology. We didn't time this, Manon, but in the policy, there's references to things such as Walkmans, fax machines, things that are just old and don't really exist too much any longer. They've now been replaced with things like e-reader, something, laptops, things that are a little bit more up to speed with the current environment that we're in. We actually took Walkman. Totally coincidental. Okay, anything else on that one? Okay. The next one is still under students, that's suicide prevention and intervention. So the Connecticut General Statute now requires that Board of Eds adopt a written policy and a procedure for dealing with youth suicide prevention and youth suicide attempts. But it authorizes the board, but does not require you to establish a student assistance program or identify risk factors and all the things that are laid out. We do a lot of this already. The board is not required to have those additional supports in place. It's recommended. I can say between what we do and what we also, the other emphasis on this is we can also partner with other agencies such as Youth and Family Service, District Medical Advisor. Those are not things that are required by law, but they're recommended. Those are things that we currently do in practice, but the law just clarifies what the roles and the responsibilities of the board are. So the law requires that you have a policy. It authorizes you to do the other things, but doesn't require you to do them. I'm here to tell you that we do those other things that are listed out in that policy. That was a long one, so I didn't.
We also have a medical advisor.
We have a district med, Dr. Condulis, our district medical advisor. So those are all components where it allows you to partner with outside agencies, particularly around suicide prevention and intervention. We currently do. We work a lot with Youth and Family Services around this. Obviously, we just did a survey, so we're already doing those things. The law just codifies that you're allowed to. But the important piece for you is you have to have a policy. The other stuff is optional. We do all of it already. Anybody on that? And the last one, this is going to. I'm gonna refer all questions on this one to Jack. I'm kidding. You're the teacher. So as you know, the Connecticut State Board of Education put a position statement. With regards to personal technology use in Connecticut schools. We've revised our policy. Allows us to choose if we can develop more specific policies or rules regarding the use of cell phones during the school day. When we had the policy committee meeting, I was still a bit ambiguous on where this was going. Nothing is etched in stone yet. However, I'm on good authority that it doesn't appear as if the state of Connecticut or the legislature is going to pass a universal cell phone ban. They're going to leave that to local districts. So what I believe they are going to require us to do, and again, it's not done yet because they're still in session. This was written when the position statement came out for us to start having this conversation, thinking the hammer was going to drop, that the state was going to unify that. What this doesn't, what they're most likely going to direct us to do, and we won't know definitively until later in the summer, is you're going to be required to have a yes or no cell phone policy. And within that yes or no cell phone policy, I don't have definitive information, but I can take an educated guess. If the board's will is to go the no route, the state is not going to send you a check to pay for the bags. And what I mean by bags there are some districts that you see that they have yonder pouches where the kids put their cell phones in. We're gonna have to have a little bit more work when it comes to identifying who's gonna take these kids' phones from them and its search of personal property. But fundamentally, we were all under the impression that the state was gonna universally ban cell phones.
I think I read something today that the House passed a bill that they ended up throwing a whole bunch of stuff in there, which included banning cell phones.
It's gonna get thrown in the omnibus bill, is what I'm being told, but it hasn't passed both chambers yet, and we don't know where the governor stands. Now, I think the governor's stance on this is he wants to ban them because anytime he goes to a public school, he usually has a press conference in a school that bans cell phones. That also has yonder pouches that I don't think they pay for. I don't know. I have no inside information. All I know is we were all waiting to see, is this gonna be mandated or not? Because we have to make adjustments. From what I'm being told through the legislative committee is they're not gonna do a universal ban one way or the other. They're gonna leave it to local districts. But they are gonna require you to have a firm policy on one way or another. So this is going to be a serious, my recommendation is when we have to make that policy, and I spoke with Ms. Baker about this, one agenda item for that meeting. Because people are, everyone has an opinion on this. And I'm not giving you mine until we're forced to do it unless you want it right now, but I can tell you that that is going to be a hot topic. But the state didn't really do us a lot of favors with telling us one way or the other. Yes, sir.
I read through this policy. My concern comes back to the search section of it. And I brought this up in the past about who can search a phone, when they can search a phone, things of that nature. It becomes very vague in this. It says that it, the search of a student's phone and is in accordance with the applicable board policy for search and seizure. So I looked that up. We have 3 separate policies on search and seizure. I think that's a little excessive, especially because this says whatever's applicable. Couple things that jumped out at me when I then read the search and seizure policy, because this all kind of ties together, is that it says that that they'll do it on reasonable grounds. And so my concern with reasonable grounds is what reasonable to who? How is this documented? Do we have any policy or procedure? So, last year my concern was I didn't want teachers, no offense. I didn't want teachers just grabbing a phone, searching a phone. That's not their job. They shouldn't be their responsibility. I wanted it to be an administrator only. When we talk about reasonable grounds, to me, that's before that phone is searched, somebody should be able to articulate in writing what the reasonable ground is that they're going to be searching a phone to protect themselves, protect the school district, so that if a parent does get irate or whatever happens, we have it documented. These were the reasonable grounds or reasonable suspicion of what we were looking for. We weren't just searching through a phone. So my real concern is that we have, if we're going to go that route, that we have a procedure in place that must be followed that documents why we're actually grabbing somebody's phone. Look, if my kid did something wrong, by all means, but you need to articulate before you find whatever you think you're gonna find. I wanna know what you're looking for, not just going through my son's phone. And one other thing that jumped out at me when I was reading that, we still have a section that gives the right to do strip searches, and I really think we need to remove that. At no point do I think any of our administrators should be involved in any kind of strip search. If it's that serious, turn it over to the police, let them deal with it. And if they feel that, I don't even know the police do strip searches, so I don't know why we have language on that.
That one's not here, right? Cause
No, that's that under that reference to the search and seizure.
yeah, I'm gonna, I don't wanna answer the strip search one because I dealt with this before. And there's another reason legally that has to be in there, but I'm not diverse on that particular component of that, so I don't wanna answer.
It's 1D under administrative regulation regarding search and seizure.
So there's a difference between reasonable suspicion and probable cause. So police can't look at anything if they don't have probable cause. We have the ability to look at things for reasonable suspicion. I can tell you as a practice, there is no administrator or teacher that wants to go through a kid's phone if they don't have it. And teachers aren't going through phones, it would be kicked up to administrator. The cases where an administrator would go through a phone could be a combination of both, meaning law enforcement doesn't have probable cause, but they have information to believe that there could be something dangerous with a particular student's device. That's usually, in my experience, how it goes. Cops tell the administrator, we can't look at it, but there's something on Snapchat that you gotta check out on this particular student. In all of my experience with getting onto kids' personal cell phones, it has always been student safety related. Not, hey, I'm trying to find gossip, or did you cheat a test, or anything like that. It's been something that's in conjunction with law enforcement. That has always been the bar, whether or not the documentation process through both are up to the same standards that people would like. I can just tell you that in practice, because the administrator, I don't want to speak for all of them, but I will. They don't want to search your kid's phone because if they find something, they're usually being told by law enforcement, like, you got to get on that kid's phone because the cops can't. The other piece of that is if they check on a certain particular student's phone, that student's gonna go home and tell mom or dad, and mom or dad are gonna be annoyed at it. So they're only going there if they absolutely have to. And that has been standard, not just my time here, but in my previous experience. We don't wanna get in the habit of going through kids' stuff unless we absolutely have to. And the same thing goes, there's a whole conversation about search and seizure because there was a lot of conversation years ago about metal detectors in schools. We should put metal detectors in the doors. The problem with metal detectors, especially in a larger school, is police officers can't administer them. The only one who could search a student in the state of Connecticut is a licensed administrator holding an 092 certification. So we have a metal detector, that means an administrator has to wand the student. They find something, they have to take it. Now, the police officer can stand next to them, but they can't search the kid because they don't have probable cause. So I'm open to having this conversation more in the context of what's going. This is just the changes that need to be made. I think this policy is more just a precursor of, we need to have the cell phone conversation and we're gonna be forced to have it. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think there's a lot in that, and I'm hoping I clarify some of it for you. I tell you as a practice, and again, I haven't been here that long. I have not met an administrator who will openly say to a kid, hey, give me your phone.
Right, just put it away.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if that happens. I just know the language that we have. And if it rarely happens, then to me, it doesn't seem like it would be all that hard for an administrator to shoot you maybe a quick email, hey, this information came from Johnny Law. I'm going to open it based on this. Now we have it documented of what a reasonable suspicion.
What they'll typically do is document it after the fact, because a lot of time it happens in real time. And I can just tell you in extreme circumstances where a police officer may say there's something out on Snapchat and we can't get at it, but it could be something that's significant. As an administrator, can you take that kid's phone and then they'll literally, sometimes they'll do it in front of the student. They won't take it and hide it, but they'll go on and say, open up Snapchat. And a lot of times our administrators do it with kids clubs, like kids have passcodes. They're looking through a kid's phone, they can't get on there. To write your passcode down so I can go in the office and look at it, they'll do it in front of the student. But a lot of times it's gotta be something pretty significant, and that does happen, where law enforcement may get tipped off that a kid put something on it, and it's usually social media. And the only one who can get on there to look at the immediate potential issue would be one of our administrators. That's the cases where I'm familiar with, the rare instance where we've actually had a look at a kid's phone.
So you think we're getting a little bit off
Yes.
agenda for this particular one? What I'm hearing though is potentially going back to policy. So I mean, a note to maybe take a note to look at those search and seizures as something for what the wording is. Do we want to make any changes or tweaks, et cetera, because this policy references a first use. And then eventually we're gonna have the discussion about cell phones, yay or nay, but you know, for a later date in policy when required. Okay,
And that concludes all the potential first reasons.
okay,
Thanks, Chris.
thank you. All right, and with that, we are at the time for executive session, so we'll need a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussion on the topics listed underneath the executive session of the agenda, inviting in superintendent first.
Sure.
So we'll need a motion.
Make a motion. So moved.
Moved by Steve,
Second.
seconded by Jean, all in favor? Aye, and we'll take a couple minute break just so that we can get ourselves situated.
Thank you.
Everyone else
Sure,
have
thank
a
you.
great
Thank you.
night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Alan, I'm gonna switch over to the Google Meet.
So-